What's good, friends? This is episode 31 of the Game Pass Gamecast coming at you. With major releases surrounding the Halo and Doom franchises this year, there's one thread that seems to connect them, being a part of a reboot process. So, this week, Adam and I sit down to try to figure out what makes a quote-unquote good reboot for a series, and when exactly it is justifiable to proceed with a clean slate in monumental franchises like Halo, Doom, and even Gears of War. Should aesthetic or gameplay be emphasized more? What about previous critical response? We try to figure out the magic formula. Plus, some clarifications to the rumored trouble in paradise for the development of current-gen versions of Cyberpunk 2077. And are we getting a new entry in the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic series? All of this and much more on a new episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Rigid.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. New episodes of the show drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show and video games alike, along with our giveaways that we're working on now, and you may just hear about that one later at the end of the episode. So, as always, joining me, my partner in crime this time, Mike is not here, unfortunately. We're on on and off weeks now, it seems like, but everyone will be back together next week, and we actually have a pretty cool show planned for next week, that I don't want to spoil anything about it, but it's a pretty fun show that we got coming up next week. But this one will be good too, because we got my boy, Adam Marshy Marsh. Adam, what's good, what's going on, and what have you been playing recently?
Not much, Travis. I'm doing pretty good.
Actually, before you talk on that, how did your session go last week since you weren't here?
The D&D session?
Yes, sir.
It went really well. I have 3 players. I'm going to have 4 this week. One more of my coworkers joined in.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so...
Are you guys doing that remotely, or are you doing it in person?
No, we're staying at the office.
Oh, nice.
Yep, we are allowed to use it after hours, so we just stay late on Tuesdays. We play from 6 until 9 or 10.
Oh, nice. That's really cool. That's the one thing, I like where I work, don't get me wrong. It's just there's no... One, I'm at work far too long doing actual work stuff. But, it's one of those things that it's not the same type of environment, I guess. But I'd love to have that environment where we could all just kick back and be like, all right, let's stay an extra hour or two after. Either play Smash or play something like that, or just board game, whatever, just kind of chillax and unwind together. Instead of going to a bar or something like that instead, because that shit's expensive. So, enough about D&D, which is dope, and I love D&D. But what have you been playing outside of that?
So this week, or actually this past weekend, I finally finished the Champion's Ballad on Zelda Breath of the Wild.
No shit, really?
Yeah, it took me this long, but I was finally I should really just get this done. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of the weekend, I beat. I had only completed 1 of the trials, so I'll do the other 3. Mm-hmm. And the final boss was super hard, especially on Master Mode. But I'm really glad I finally wrapped that up. It left me wishing I could play that game again for the first time.
Oh my god, that's on that list of, and there's 2 Zelda titles that are on there for me. Ocarina of Time, of course, but yeah. That's up there. That game releasing was such a time capsule moment that recent game, and it's I've actually been thinking about that recently. There's games that I know pop up on my radar that I'm I really, as I'm playing this, I'm man, I'm never going to experience this game for the first time again. Recently was The Witcher 3, that finally clicking and living and breathing in that world. It's weird, I kind of pick those out now. Outside of that, like I said, Witcher, Spider-Man, last year with that, Red Dead even 2. Not as much, surprisingly, as I thought it would be, but definitely up there. God of War, obviously, another one, but Breath of the Wild was the one that stuck out the most, and that's probably because it was around a console launch as well. And I remember all of us, me taking a half day at work, getting it at midnight in my Switch and everything, taking a half day at work, you coming back because you were still in undergrad, coming back that weekend, and us two and Mike and Alexis too, just piled in your basement and just played all weekend.
That was a lot of fun.
That was, yeah. But yeah, I beat that. It's lucky. I was lucky with the timing. It kind of panned out with the Champions Ballot expansion. It dropped the day before. I think it was the night before. My fiance and I were going to our like weekend little trip away in Florida and Disney when we got engaged. So I had literally 2 hours down on a plane and 2 hours back that I was like, cool, I have nothing else to do. I'm just going to sit here and play. Like, I had time that I was like forced to play it almost.
Yeah.
Or I probably would have been in the same boat. There's 50 other fucking things I got to play and do, and plus life, so. But that's cool, man. That's cool. What else you been playing?
Besides that, I picked up Void Bastards on the Xbox Game Pass, which I've been wanting to give it a try for a while. It's got such a striking visual style.
Oh my god!
And the premise of it sounded so cool. So I finally started playing that just a little bit. I've only had time to do like not even an entire run. I've only visited like 3 or 4 different ships.
Give me the quick elevator pitch on this game.
As far as I can tell, because I haven't even completed a whole run yet, it is a roguelike game where you play as kind of like prisoners being rehabilitated on the ship, and you're sort of drifting through space. It's a bit like FTL. You're sort of hopping from point to point, and you're boarding these other derelict ships to scavenge for resources that you use to, you have a food supply, so you have to survive for periods of time. You have fuel, which lets you jump. You have crafting materials for making like more weapons and equipment and stuff. And all of your materials are persisted across runs. So you like go through this whole research tree and stuff.
Nice. I've always been interested. That dropped, I think, right around the time of Outer Wilds. It was that Outer Wilds and something else. And I remember I wanted to play all 3 games that came out. And I can't remember what the game right around then that I was kind of sucked into at that moment that I was like, Outer Wilds and Void Bastards both on Game Pass that I was like, I know I can get to those whenever, I went out and physically bought this other game. I can't remember what it was even, that in my mind I was justifying, well, I went out and actually bought this. I'll play this first type of thing. But I am really interested actually to go back and play that because it seems like it's one of those, like you said, a roguelite, but such a cool spin on it. Plus that art direction is asininely cool. That it's like neon cell shaded, but almost like it's almost if like a Spencer's gift shop threw up on Wind Waker, basically.
It's also got kind of this like this comic book aesthetic going for it, where you have like sound effects are spelled out in text on the screen with like effects on them, and the gameplay is really fun. It reminds me a bit of System Shock. They feel like self-contained System Shock levels, where it's kind of this simmy. It's an FPS, but the focus is really on the exploration and like getting around the ship, using the different like locking a door behind you or activating this turret or, dodging enemies and kind of corralling them into a space so you can move around them. Just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It's one of those games that luckily with how the spring has now shaped up, because it looked like we were going to have release after release after release after release this spring of just major games that are coming out that are all on my like, fuck, well, I really have been waiting to play that list. So it's now that those are all kind of, switched around now and spread out, it's one of those games I'm definitely going to dip a toe in the water. I'm not sure if I'm going to play it on PC or console yet, though. I'm really kind of torn between them. If any type of first-person shooter of any regard, I usually try to just play it on PC. But I'm definitely interested in playing it, and on top of what you're telling me, plus other people I've heard about, it's good things, and it seems like it scratches a specific itch, so I might wait closer till I get that, like, roguelite run and gun type of thing where you're just making runs like that, and I get in that mood where I just want to pop in and out. But it's definitely on my list to try out. On my end, and Adam, the first game I want to start off with, and I want to, because the second one's more more going to be like, this is just fucking amazing. I'm going to talk about how much of an emotional connection I've gotten to this. But first game, and I know I've talked to you about this before, and it inspired me from our top 100 games of the 2010s. Go back and watch that episode. It's on the YouTube, all that jazz, yada yada, on demand. Undertale. All right.
Ooh,
I've been
not what I was expecting.
Yeah, so Undertale. All right, let me tell you about fucking Undertale. I mean, you know about Undertale, but let me tell you how I've been with Undertale. So, picked it up, and I bought it, and it is on Game Pass. It's on Game Pass for PC. Definitely recommend it. It's a great game, and I am loving it. I picked it up though on PlayStation because it felt like you could get it on Vita and PS4 cross buy. So literally I was thinking, oh cool, I could have cross saves. Like, it's one of those games that I'm not going to be, it's not that long of a game, but it's one of those things that, oh, this is like a perfect, like, I could, if Molly's watching something on TV and, you know, I don't really want to watch The Bachelor or some shit like that, I could pop it up on my Vita or whatever, which it lives. I'm the one person on Vita Island still. So I was thinking, I'm like, oh, perfect. And if not, I could just fucking, you know, send my save over to my PS4 and play it on there. It's not cross-save, which sucks, and I found that out. But I also didn't know that you really have a choice in if you want to be good or bad whenever you're approaching the game. If you want to fight monsters and kill monsters, you can. If you don't want to kill anybody, you don't have to. I didn't know that. And I started out as a holy fucking piece of shit and was like killing everyone. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm killing, which is acceptable in the game. You could do a genocide run. But after me, just how I am with games, if I have an option, I'm just like innately wired to do like, just be a good guy. So I had to do a pacifist run. So I like stopped it. Whenever I tweeted last Monday, when I was like, shit, I didn't realize we had off work. I drove an hour into work or whatever. So when I came home later that day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a new save on Undertale. It's not that long. You know, I got the afternoon. What the hell? So I started that up. Loved it. Got to right now, though. I'm on Muffet right now. And Adam, let me tell you, this bitch is irritating the piss out of me. I probably died to her. It's got to be well over 40 times, I'd say. I'm getting...
Oh, jeez.
And here's the thing. So, I know that if you, at the beginning of the game, when you're in the ruins, if you buy a donut from the spiders, and you, like, eat it during that battle, she'll just stop, and you win the battle. I did buy that donut, but I ate it whenever I was about to die at one point. So,
oh no!
So that's gone. Can't get back to the ruins. So that plan's gone. I'm now stuck in this. Okay, well, I went and there's like not a glitch, but there's like you could cheese one of the shops and like you can go and buy. I think it's in the waterfall. You can go and buy these goggles from this one vendor, and you can go and find this other vendor that you could sell them back to this woman for like, I think it's like 30 extra gold or something. Like you sell it back for more, so you make money. So you just go and you like buy as many slots as you can worth of it, then go sell it to her, and you make money. Like you could cheese it a little bit. So I did that, and I'm just buying cinnamon buns out the ass to like restock my health, and it's just. I think she has 17 waves that you have to, like, dodge through. And I keep getting to, like, 15 or 16 and dying. And it's just...
That's pretty insane. I remember having more trouble with... You'll get to other fights later on that, like, I had a lot of trouble with. And Alexis did, too. When she was playing the game, I definitely had to beat one of the bosses for her. I won't spoil which one, but... I definitely want to hear more about your playthrough once you... make more progress.
And I'm doing a full pacifist run through. So like I'm really enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. Like the writing is fucking fantastic. The characters are fantastic. Like I love everything about this game, even the art style. But it's just that this one area I'm just like, God damn it, I just want to be fucking done already. Like or move on. Like so I'll beat it eventually, but I always feel like I've been stuck on it for so long when really it's like probably been an hour worth of game time because it's so quick. Like, So I'll beat it eventually. Hopefully next week I'm talking about how much I enjoyed the ending of it. But yeah. And then the other game though because other stuff I played on has been on different consoles. But the other game that I played, and I talked about hoping to start this last week once Molly and I finished up Walking Dead, was Life is Strange. So her and I are playing through that. Absolutely fucking love this game. I knew I would, but it's one of those, like, I've been putting it on the back burner. I'm like, that'll be a good one to get to whenever I want to play that, choose your own adventure-esque style game, whatever, yada yada. But her and I have been playing a lot of those recently because it's, one, an easy way for her and I to play video games together, and two, I love those type of narratives, and she does too. So it's like, it's very easy for us to, I don't have to twist her arm to play it, and she doesn't have to twist mine. So, but the characters in this game, Max and Chloe's relationship is really heartwarming. The narrative is really picking up right now. We're on episode 5, which is the last of that season. Oh, wow. So, yeah, and they're really quick episodes. They're like an hour and a half or whatever. Like, yeah. It's very reminiscent to episodic TV. Like any Telltale-esque or game like that. Don't Nod has the market corner to get. They're like Telltale. Anything they put out, I'm going to try at this point because they have the market cornered on that type of game. And I'm actually really excited for their next title coming out, Tell Me Why, is going to be Xbox exclusive. And it looks really, really, really good. I'm really excited to play that. But and Life is Strange too. I've heard excellent things about that. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. A little bit of housekeeping before we move in. No giveaway read right this second, but wait till the end of the episode. We gave away our free game last week. We did give that away, so make sure you listen to last week. But this week, we'll be announcing our next giveaway at the very end of the episode. Make sure you stick around, post-credits, yada yada, all that shit. It's like a Marvel movie, you gotta fucking stay till the end. So, make sure you stick around to that. We'll announce our next giveaway for that. But let's head into the news. So, first news article coming up here, Adam. CD Projekt Red disputes Cyberpunk 2077 rumors of PS4 and Xbox One performance issues. This comes from Tyler Fisher over at comicbook.com. Reads, earlier this week, a report started to make the rounds from a prominent Polish gaming journalist that claimed Cyberpunk 2077 was delayed from April to spring because developer CD Projekt Red was having serious trouble getting the games running on PS4 and Xbox One. In other words, the lack of power on both consoles was an issue for the ambitious open-world role-playing game. And, as a result, the game was delayed in an attempt to buy the Polish developer more time on the ports. Fast forward a bit, and a developer at the studio has squashed these rumors over on the official CD Projekt Red forums. According to the developer, a tweet about this rumor for Cory Barlog, which is the creative director of God of War, one of the best human beings in video games today. Seriously, follow him on Twitter, he's awesome. Hit the nail on the head. Every game has optimization issues until the final push, so the fact that the game is still running poor on the consoles is pretty common and not indicative of much. Further, the game was delayed not because of one reason, but many. Quote, Cory Barlog hit the nail on the head, wrote the developer. Of course we're optimizing for the Xbox One and for the PlayStation and for the PC because that's what you do in the last stretches of game development. While the game is made, lots of things are unoptimized because they're all in flux, changing, and still not finished. The developer continued, so simple answers like they delayed the game because of X might make for a good rumor, but don't hold a lot of truth. There's always many reasons. Among them, and I could speak for myself, simply fixing bugs so the game is as polished as possible. No hidden agendas, just working on making the game better. So, at face value, I can understand the need for not only fans but shareholders, since CD Projekt is a publicly traded company, to find reasons as to why one of really the most anticipated games of this generation is being delayed. But it seems like overarching narratives are just like shoehorned into every decision that is made by AAA developers in modern gaming, and it's probably due now to the now norm of the social media 24/7 news cycle, and just having to have a reason or agenda behind everything. And they kind of touch on that in the article. Do you think, Adam, this trend falls more on members of the media kind of rushing to make a story, get clicks and whatnot? Or is it kind of on the opposite end and some blame placed on the developer to the normality of non-transparency from game developers of this kind of, that, game development has always really been kind of this like shrouded, magician kind of behind the curtain type of thing where it's always the one famous example people always use is Bethesda with Fallout 4. Them never saying, oh, Fallout 4, no, it isn't in development. And then, 3 months before release or whatever, 4 months before release, at E3, they reveal it and do this big blowout on it. And it's like, well, everyone knows it was released. Why would you say, So, transparency kind of being so vague on the development end, does that hurt them as well? So, and hell, also on top of that, do you think Cyberpunk is going to run well on current gen hardware, or will the kind of definitive way to play this game be on next gen consoles through backwards compatibility or something like that?
I don't doubt that they're going to have some improvements on next gen. They're going to take advantage of that tech if they have it available to them. But more to your main question, I think Corey was probably in the right in saying most games are very ugly and barely work up until the point that they're basically ready to ship, right? So for a news company to latch onto a rumor about the game not being ready or being delayed because of some reason that it's like it's got a lot of hurdles yet to clear. I mean, every game has hurdles to clear before it reaches release.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's really worth reporting on. There's almost no like culpability for a journalist to like run a story like that ends up going nowhere.
Yeah.
But it could have a negative impact on, the way the shareholders feel about the progress of the game, the way the audience feels about the progress of the game, and it's not a very constructive. I don't know. It's not a constructive viewpoint because there's not much you can do besides wait to see if the problems work themselves out, and most of the time they will.
Right. Especially you gotta look at CD Projekt Red, specifically in the CD Projekt lineage. That's a developer that, one, their most recent game is heralded as one of now the best games of all time and a modern gaming masterpiece to a lot of people. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be all right. Like, I trust them enough that, hell, they announced this game in, I think it was 2012 and put a teaser out in 2013, something like that, and literally just put a tag on it, it's ready when it's ready, So to me, this is literally fishing for, and I think people have called out this person before, and this isn't Tyler over at comicbook.com we're talking about, this is the Polish games journalist. I think they've called him out a few times on different things that he was kind of going for clicks more or less, and a lot of people on more of the dev side called him out, saying like, almost in a sense of, it's like looking at it like, I'm not a plumber, I'm not going to tell a plumber how to do his job type of thing. Like, you know what I mean? I'm going to let the people who know what's best about this handle what they think is best about this and trust in them. And like I said, though, I get it to an extent if you're a shareholder, even a fan, that you're investing money in of some sort to this, but at the same time, you got to look at it in a logical way and not kind of, I'm just going to do a cheap plug here or a cheap pull and say, well, it could be that it's not running well. And it's like, well, the game was announced in 2012 and probably started work around 2014-ish, 2015, I'd say, past pre-production once The Witcher was pretty much done. I think they were aiming to get it working on this gen consoles. And you know what? Hell yeah, it's going to probably look better on next-gen consoles through backwards compatibility. If I want to play, I know I always use it as a fucking example, but if I want to play Oblivion, if I don't want to play it on my PC, hell, I could pull my disc from 2006, put it into my Xbox One X, and guess what? There's a fucking 4K patch for it, and it runs at like 60 frames. And it looks gorgeous. Guess what? It's better than it would run on any other software that's below an Xbox One X. So yeah, it's going to run better on more modern tech that support backwards compatibility. Duh. But I'm sure they're optimizing it for this generation. Now, they may optimize it for the Pro models, the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro. Yeah, which that's a whole other discussion, and Mike and I have talked about that before on a couple of episodes. And we've went into conversations around that, and especially around our our kind of impressions on Modern Warfare from this past fall. Go check that episode out. But it's just kind of, have some integrity, I guess, which is hard to find now that everyone kind of has access to do these type of things, which is good and bad, I guess. But anyways, let's move into our second one, and I think you might like this one, Adam, a little bit. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake rumored to be in development at EA. This comes, like I said, over at IGN.
Oh boy.
This comes over on IGN via Adam Bankhurst. The article reads, the latest rumor indicates that a new Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic project is underway at EA, and it looks to, quote, integrate elements from the first two games in order to bring certain things into the current Star Wars canon, quote. As reported by CineLinks, two sources claim to have knowledge on the rumored return of this beloved franchise. The first source says a remake of the 2003... I'm so used to saying 2020 now that I'm like 20 whatever.
Oh, yeah.
The first source says a remake of the 2003 classic is in development, while the second expands and says it, quote, wasn't so much of a remake, but a sequel of sorts. This new project, as previously mentioned, would take elements from the first Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, and retool the first two stories to make them fit in current canon. These rumors do fall in line with Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy's previous comments confirming that Lucasfilm is developing, quote, something Knights of the Old Republic related. There have also been rumors of a Knights of the Old Republic film, with some sources linking Game of Thrones' D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, who are no longer creating a Star Wars trilogy. It was reported last year, after the cancellation of KOTOR 3, that Obsidian always envisioned the game being a trilogy. Lead writer Chris Avellone from Reboot Develop also said KOTOR 3 would have been about uncovering the original stories of the Sith Lords, and that they foreshadowed what Darth Revan was doing during the second game. As for the current canon, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker did make Darth Revan canon, as one of Emperor Palpatine's Sith Trooper legions was named the Third Revan Legion. So, I've never played KOTOR, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So, that kind of, I do remember in The Rise of Skywalker that being pointed out, and like, I was like, who the fuck's that? Like, going back and looking. I've never played KOTOR, but I've heard amazing things. You, on the other hand, Adam, as a fan of the KOTOR series, what made this series have kind of such a longevity in the gaming landscape compared to multiple other projects? You know, was a beloved RPG developer in Obsidian a large reason, especially, you know, with the second one? Or do you think the Star Wars license holds more weight in that conversation? Also, as a fan, what are you hoping to see from this return to the series?
I would say yes, a lot of the appeal of the originals were a result of the developers' skill and charm. Mm-hmm. The second game was developed by Obsidian, but I think the first one was BioWare.
Yes.
And Obsidian was working on BioWare's engine for the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And BioWare also, we know, would go on to make Mass Effect, and it's easy to see how they cut their teeth on this game,
mm-hmm.
and it really, it shaped them as developers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so definitely. A lot of charm and talent contributing to the appeal there. Also, these games just do things with the Star Wars universe that feel like they always should have been there, but other games and the films never really explore. You get some of it with the expanded universe novels, mm-hmm. but it always just felt like an essential part of Star Wars that you could not get anywhere else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's all I've heard about them, is that it covers the nitty-gritty, it covers the dark corners of the Star Wars what am I thinking of? Not canon, but like the Star Wars just expanded universe at this point, because now all of that stuff outside of the movies and certain stuff from a certain point are now in the expanded universe, I think they call it. Basically, they're not canon anymore, but it really is cool to see them see weight in this IP, that they're acknowledging, okay, there's still a shit ton of people who play this on Steam. Hell, I have a coworker who actually came up to me, it was like a week or two ago, and he's like, hey, I want to get into PC gaming. And I'm like, oh, cool, what are you like going to play? He's like, I haven't played in so long. He's like, I mostly do, if I do any gaming, it's console gaming. But he knows I'm a big fucking nerd, so he's like, you know, what do I need to get into PC gaming? And he was like, really, I'm going to be playing a lot of like Knights of the Old Republic. My friends and I like are kind of getting back into that and doing our thing on there and whatnot, and a couple of other like older Star Wars titles. And I'm like, Oh, that's fucking cool. I was like, especially you, Adam, on top of that, talking not that long ago. I remember us, over the past couple of years, you recently playing through that again, or at least starting to. It's really cool to see that an IP like that has been around forever at this point still holds so much weight, and that people keep wanting to see that be brought back. And now that, Disney seems to be taking more of an interest in using their IP in good, like, I don't want to say good ways, but like, and not more serious, but they're more attentive with how their IP is being used in gaming. They brought on John Drake last year, I believe, who was one of the higher ups at Sony with PlayStation, who handled a lot of their uses in acquiring IPs in terms of, for example, he was big with the getting Marvel Spider-Man up off the ground and using that IP and, kind of attaching it with a really good developer. Now he is over there kind of almost doing the same thing at a higher level even with Disney games and Disney Interactive, which is really exciting because that means, he's not necessarily working with Marvel, but that's also, he has, at least a foot in the door with Marvel. He has a foot in the door with Star Wars. He's still handling a lot of the random Disney IP that we could see in Kingdom Hearts games and things like that. So it's really exciting because that makes me think that there's hope for these really niche experiences like KOTOR, comparative to, and I mean, Jedi Fallen Order was my game of the year last year, as we talked about on our previous episode, but, it's still really cool to see games like KOTOR, which is an RPG series first and foremost, and it's like a niche Star Wars kind of experience in general. It's covering stuff that really isn't normally talked about within the Star Wars universe. So it's really cool to see a big company like Disney and Lucasfilm seeing the value in stuff like that still, and saying like, hey, whether it's in a game, whether it's in a movie, and for what it sounds like, they're at least going to put a toe in both, possibly in the water of both, so it's really cool to see that, I think. And I'm excited to see where they go with it. So, Adam, let's get into our big topic this week. So, when I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to talk about this week, since we have, kind of a bigger episode planned for next week, and kind of bridging the gap, there's one thing that I've kind of been thinking of, and it kind of revolves around Doom in general. So let me kind of dive in and dig around. So Doom Eternal is quickly becoming like one of the most anticipated titles of 2020, and that's really is saying a lot. We've got major titles like Cyberpunk 2077, The Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Halo seeing launches. The deck is like surely stacked against a lot of that, and especially Doom. Kind of coming off of being this follow-up of an acclaimed reimagining in 2016 of that classic series, but it kind of, shows that perspective, is really valuable in how you approach game design development, and knowing when a reboot or refresh is needed with something that really kind of can be viewed as invaluable. Really, that you look at Doom 2016 and, it really took that IP that a lot of people, I don't want to say didn't care about, but I don't think people saw necessarily the same value for sure as they did, 20 years ago in Doom.
Oh yeah, we certainly didn't see any motion from that series.
No, and Doom 4,
Doom 3 had come out. Man, it was like mid 2000s, right?
Yeah, it was 2004. So, and when Doom 3 came out, that was cool. I remember liking that a lot back in the day. But it was so different comparatively. It was almost like a stealth horror in a way, or like a horror shooter, more than this, what you really see at the heart of Doom that kind of 2016 brought back in a way almost, but it's fast-paced rip and tear. It's not methodical like Doom 3 was. And I think Doom 3 was good in its own right, just not what that franchise wanted. And even when Doom 4 was being teased, and they even did a build of it, like a preview build and whatnot, and they had, I think, an alpha running at one point. But it was very different, and it was very late 2000s. To, Call of Duty-esque, that I'm really glad they did end up scrapping that and kind of going back to the drawing board once Bethesda picked up id Studio. But, it's really invaluable, what I'm trying to say, perspective, and being able to take the value in, seeing value in an IP, but realizing, okay, it's time for a refresh. It's time for a reboot. So, continuing the trend, the trend in 2020 with Doom's 2016 follow-up, we also see, brand new iterations of Half-Life and Halo, a first time since, like you were saying, 2004, when all three of those were even getting new iterations at the same time. But what's more even impressive is the response to their kind of approach to reboots and refreshes. They all seem positive. People seem excited about these series coming back in new, fresh ways. So today I kind of want to talk about what I'm calling the art of the reboot. I want to try to figure out what makes rebooting a franchise so alluring, and more importantly, how it can be done properly. So kind of to start it off, on a serious note here, Adam, and I don't want you to hold back on this one. I feel like one franchise that finds itself being rebooted pretty much every release is fucking Sonic the Hedgehog. So why do people struggle so hard with getting this specific franchise right and wrong? Like, why do they struggle so much doing right? And two, why do they even bother at times? Like, does the Blue Blur not even hold that much of a namesake in 2020? Like, why the fuck do people keep making Sonic the Hedgehog games at this point if they all suck outside of, like, Sonic Mania? Like, the fuck?
My only response can be is that people keep buying them.
True. Which is
for some reason. Like, Sonic fans, they kind of have a rough deal. They get, like, one good game every time Venus is in Aquarius or something like that,
Yeah, astrology and shit, But I agree. Like, literally, there's two different sects of Sonic fans. There's the Sonic fans who are like, early 30s, late 20s, like kind of close to our age bracket, a little bit older, that grew up on the Genesis and just love Sonic. Like, I remember investing so much time as a kid and watching this franchise grow and playing everyone, and then, I just fell off. But I believe that there's something good there, and I just want to keep supporting it. There's that. But then there's also this weird fucking, sect of Sonic deviant art shit, like, where it's just, there's like, you just don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Let's just put it that way. There's stuff that definitely, if you're listening to this at work, put headphones on, don't listen to this fucking out loud right now. But you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's just a very divided franchise, but in general, Sonic's just, I don't get why they reboot, like, at least commit to it. Like, my big thing with Sonic is, and we'll get to a serious topic here in a second, I just need to throw fucking Sonic out there because it's just ridiculous at this point. But literally, like, it's like every other one they reboot, but they finally get one right. They bring in people who worked on making fan-made Sonic games. Then they brought them on to make the port of the iOS original Sonic the Hedgehog. That worked out really well. A lot of people like that, so they brought them on to make Sonic Mania. But now, even then, like, they have one that works. People love that. They found one that finally works, but now, from what I'm hearing, they're like, I don't think we're going to stick with that team. We're going to use our own internal team. We could do Sonic Mania 2 ourselves. Like, what's the point, Like, it's like, okay, you struck gold, but, at this point now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't, like, I get being creative and like, hey, we want to build off the momentum of this game. We want to add on to that. Well, no, at the same time, I agree. Yeah, but you don't, whenever you build a new house, you still got to build the foundation. You still got to have a good foundation with it. Like, you got one built there. If you're building an addition, you still got to have the house there. So, yeah, I just don't get it. But anyways, let's get into, like, serious discussion around this. So to start off, when you think of reboots in gaming, what series come to mind in both good regards and bad regards in terms of the iterations of reboots? What made them succeed or even what made them fail? Like, what do you think of good and bad whenever you think of reboots in gaming?
I mean, the Sonic example, it's just in a season of perpetual reboot, so that's almost like the quintessential example. It feels like a lot of games are kind of reinventing themselves every couple of years. You've got stuff like Call of Duty with its installments. It feels like the formula is changing up, and we're only just now starting to see some of them being rebooted, with Modern Warfare just coming out, getting the same... It's like a definitive reboot of the original Modern Warfare, or a remake rather. And I don't know if they're planning to continue with that, but
I think from what I've heard, they're going back to Black Ops next year or something. But I'm also not. I'm not.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they start rebooting Black Ops.
Yeah, I mean, hell, like you just said, they rebooted fucking Modern Warfare. So like, I agree that where it's like, yet again, even though that franchise literally has been going strong, that I just actually heard today. I was listening to the Easy Allies podcast and for this week, and they brought up NPD numbers, like sales numbers for the past decade of, hey, here's from January of 2010 to December of 2019. These are the best selling games of all time. 90% of them for the top 20 were Call of Duty entries. It was like literally, what was the first overall? Oh, fuck, what was it? I can't remember. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, but literally second, though, was Call of Duty. Third was Call of Duty. Fourth was Call of Duty. Like, it was just boom, 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 right. Call of Duty. And literally, like you're saying, now granted, Activision has, like, 3 or 4 studios working on it at one point, so it's just a revolving door at that point where the wheel keeps spinning and they keep churning out new ones, but it's still just, like, it's kind of mind-boggling at times that they don't stick to one different thing. It's like they feel the need to go in and change stuff just to change stuff, almost. At least that's what I think whenever I see it. But one that I always kind of think of that always comes to mind, and Grant, like I said, this is an Xbox show. You hear about me talking all the time, but God of War really is, I think, going to be the poster child for rebooting or rebirthing a franchise. I'm sure we'll kind of talk about it in a little bit with Halo, and a lot of people throwing the comparisons of how Halo Infinite's going to be to this. But I think that is easily going to be the, hey, we want to take our franchise and we want to make it we want to take that and God of War-ify it almost. We want to take it and pull a completely refreshed view on X character with it, where Kratos, for the longest time, God of War in general, just this hack and slash, beat 'em up almost style action game, like a Bayonetta, like a Platinum game almost, only a little bit slower pace, but it was over the top action and Kratos literally just being a angry Chad jacked up on Monster Energy drinks. So only with, the Blades of Chaos and beating the piss out of Zeus and shit. But then taking that character and literally peeling back and seeing how many layers it could have, breaking it down to its core and building it back up as this intricately wound piece of, fiction with him, and saying, hey, he's dealing with the struggles now of his past, and he has a child now, and his wife is passed, and he's struggling to be a father by protecting his son from his past mistakes, and wanting to leave that life behind while also pushing that forward, and making you actually legitimately care about this character and what he's going through, and making it such a heartfelt experience that people latched onto instantly and was like, this is what we want to see out of more of these characters that we traditionally don't. So I always think that's going to be the poster child forever about that. And even another series that comes to mind too, in more of a niche market, but Prey. And whenever Bethesda picked up that IP, I mean, for the longest time, I remember when Prey first came out, the original iteration of it on Xbox 360, I remember that being that, like, almost tech showpiece, or, like, showpiece software of that console, of being like, hey, I'm going to pop this in just so you could see what this console could actually do. Almost, I don't want to use Oblivion as the example, but that was very much so. Granted, Oblivion, a little more depth to it, obviously, but it was very much that, hey, this is what HD gaming could look like. We're going to pop this in. You're going to check out I think it was like 1080i or whatever at that point, because I don't even think the original, I think in like 2006 when that came out, 360s didn't even have an HDMI port on them. But but whenever plugging it in, like, that is one that you could show off and see it, but you never really, I remember there was always like it was like cult following to it almost, and then they were going to do a sequel to it, then just fell off, and that game just fucking disappeared forever, that franchise. Lo and behold, literally out of nowhere, Bethesda picks it up, gives it to Arcane Studios, who have made great things in the past, coming out of nowhere and kind of bringing this random IP back. And I mean random in a good way. We just haven't heard anything about it. And, them putting out the E3 reveal trailer for it and kind of people being like, what the fuck? And then releasing and actually getting really good reviews on it and kind of being this like sleeper hit almost. And really that reboot being, because it was presented in a way that's so much different than the original one, for the most part at least. And really a different setting and everything, but tying into the original IP in a few different ways. But it's really a good example of, even if it isn't a gangbuster franchise, you can really find success if you do it in the right way and approach it with the right audience, that reboots really can be effective. But, kind of building off of that, gameplay normally tends to be the most important element when designing a video game, right? Obviously, if it isn't fun to play, why play it? Many times you hear developers talk on how we wanted to evolve the gameplay to fit a modern mold or set a new standard. So what game franchise do you think have implemented that ideology best when trying to give a franchise a second breath of life? Even, when I think of it, I think of really even Zelda. I know this is an Xbox show, but I think of Zelda with Breath of the Wild and wanting to actually, they acknowledge that while people still love these games and, they're still great polished experiences that get great reviews, I think they acknowledge that that formula was getting a little bit stale, and that the traditional, third person over the shoulder action game that it's very linear and there's no voice acting, there's no this and that. Like it's a very contained story that they said, okay, let's look at the industry and where they're moving to and different things that going on there. Let's take this franchise and kind of blow it up and give people more of what they've been clamoring to see, a truly open world iteration of Zelda. What do you think, Adam?
I guess you could call this one a reboot, but just Bethesda taking over Fallout 3. The way that game completely jumped the shark in terms of what you would expect a Fallout game to be up until then. Because I feel like they did a decent job at capturing what made Fallout interesting, and it wasn't exactly the combat. You play the turn-based original CRPGs, and the combat's okay, but it's just there to kind of fill space and to be the action, the action-oriented part of the game when you're not doing the interesting character bits, the quest lines, the really quirky and grim and bleak stuff in the storytelling. Good on them for finding the fun in Fallout and, just kind of reskinning it and retooling it to be a modern experience that's very accessible, easy to pick up and play, but still has that same charm and that wild and woolly world for you to explore.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that's what, at least in my opinion, when I think of franchises that have gone through reboots and refreshes successfully, where they see a lot of great success, like we kind of talked about right off the bat, Doom in 2016 coming back, Breath of the Wild, and what we're hoping with Halo too is that while they're doing new and refreshing things and kind of bringing these franchises into the 21st century, quote unquote, and adding much more common elements and even evolving on them, and bringing them kind of into modern gaming's, zeitgeist, I guess, if you want to say, they still are good about keeping the heart of the game. And while Fallout, going from the original Fallout games to then actual Bethesda, developed Fallout experiences 3 and 4, they're very, very different, but at the same time, like you're saying, like you still feel the heart of the original Fallout games, which is built in the character development, the dialogue, the witty, dry humor, and that almost, it's like making dark humor most of the time. They're great of doing that. And we actually talked about it in our Fallout 3 episode, that, one of their strongest points that they've always been good at with Fallout is keeping that emphasis on dark humor and, the world's decaying around us. Talk about a Monday, right? Like type of shit like that, where Bethesda has, even if they've kind of leaned into more of a linear experience with Fallout now, as it's kind of gone on with Fallout 4, and, who knows about what Fallout 5 is going to be, even that's 10 years down the road, I'm sure. We gotta get Elder Scrolls 6 here first. But, it's one thing that I know they're always going to have that storytelling aspect of what Fallout started out with, 2 decades ago now. They've always they're able to take that, and that kind of does go on the onus of Todd Howard being involved in that and being such a Fallout fan, and him talking about, there was a few different documentaries that came out in interviews and whatnot, where he mentions, before we acquired Fallout, like, that's what I always wanted to make. That was one of my favorite franchises, in my gaming lineage, that I always loved playing. I was a Fallout fan. I just was a fan of it, and I'd always wanted to. It's like J.J. Abrams talking about wanting to make a Star Wars movie. He's been a fan of Star Wars forever. Like, that's putting people who cherish these IPs and letting the people who really care about them give a crack at them. And a lot of times it works out because it's them wanting to make the game that they've always wanted, or the movie, or whatever. You want to write a book or whatever, because they're putting keeping that heart in it, and maybe just iterating on it in new ways. And I definitely agree. Fallout's a great example of that. But so kind of moving on, 343 Industries. We talk about Halo all the time. Mike, I'm sure we'll have. I definitely want to pick his brain next week before we get into our big topic. Then, on this, but 343 Industries has gone on record saying Halo Infinite will very much be a quote-unquote soft reboot of the franchise. And from what it looks like, Halo's gameplay will be evolving in some aspects as well. What those aspects are, we don't really know. But do you think the series will move into more of a Destiny model in regards to a single-player aspects, at least? We'll know it'll have, they've already said they have a pro team working on multiplayer. It's going to be very much traditional Halo multiplayer to an extent on there. And if not, in what ways do you think the franchise can move to find evolutions in gameplay while still keeping the heart of Halo and classic and traditional Halo for those long-term fans? Because you've been playing a lot of Reach, you've been playing a lot of MCC recently. So
yeah, the magic of those games has always been, to me, about level and encounter design paired with just an excellent AI engine.
Mm-hmm.
Every single battle in that game feels unique and distinct from each other because of the way that those two things are interacting. So if they want to nail another good Halo game, they're going to have to get that right. But I don't know where else there's room for innovation within that formula. Like, maybe it's more weapon variety or vehicle variety in the interactions between those.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of tried that out. 343 did with Halo 4 and 5, introducing the Promethean flavors of weapons and enemies.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't land so well with me. I thought they were kind of, I don't know. I didn't like them as much. And I don't think they have used the Flood at all in their games. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They're mentioned and they're implemented, but just not in main.
Not in a gameplay way.
But it seems like it's possible, and that it's not out of. I think at least now I have no idea. I don't talk to 343. I don't know anyone who works on the games there. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I get the feel that I think they've always just wanted to respect Bungie's work and what they built with that. And I think it just revolves so much around the Flood with that original trilogy, at least, that it always felt like they needed to differentiate themselves from that in both good and bad ways. That I think they want to honor what was built, but they don't want to go back to the well just because it worked for them. Like, they want to be able to stand on their own with the Halo properties that they put out, and to good and bad regards. I think, like I've said on record before, I don't think Halo 5's campaign is all that bad. I didn't feel like I was wasting my time playing it. Was it great? No, but it was good. It wasn't bad. It was polished. It was not a bad experience. it was definitely mismarketed for sure, 1000%. It should have been. It very much feels like more of an ODST experience, like a side story than a main story. But almost like it feels like an extra canonical connection between mainline games. Like it just feels like something that like you would read. It's like a side story book or something that connects two Star Wars movies or something. Like it just always felt extracurricular comparative to the rest. But then in no regard, I think it's a quote unquote bad game. But so what do you think? Do you think like, let me ask you this. Do you think you're saying level design and everything like that? Do you think they're going to go in a more open world aspect with this? And when I say more Destiny, I guess, I more or less mean that in Destiny, there's these vast open areas that you can go and explore, but they're not, it's almost like the Outer Worlds where they're like areas that are quote unquote open world, but they're very linear open world. Like they're smaller,
kind of bounded, and
yeah, they're more enclosed areas, but they're large enclosed areas. Like Halo has always had pretty expansive like levels in general. Like I mean, hell, you think of the first Halo game, the Silent Cartographer, you're going down right onto the beach and you can go and explore different nooks and crannies of the island there that you're on. There's a lot to explore there. There's not just, it's not very much just a straight and narrow path you got to go down like a tunnel or anything the whole time. But I'm really curious to see, do you think they're going to kind of expand on that? Because I keep hearing that there are, more RPG elements that are going to be added to Halo where, and I'm sure not, I don't think necessarily like strength and agility and blah, blah, blah. I think it'll be more like loadout based and gear based, almost like maybe a gear score like you would see in Destiny and like you would see maybe in the Division or whatnot. What do you think?
I think it's possible, and I think it could be successful. I don't know about adding like character progression, maybe gear progression. But I think they could be really successful with kind of an open world design if you attack it from a perspective of, we have these different areas where we know there's going to be encounters, but you can approach them from any direction. Kind of like Breath of the Wild with enemy camps, or you might even go so far as to say like a Far Cry or another open world game type situation where you have like an outpost where there are enemies and you can kind of get in whichever way your playstyle suits. Maybe you're walking through this canyon and you round a bend and you're like basically getting ambushed, like they get the drop on you and then you have to duck into cover. Maybe a different time you come into the same encounter, but you're up at the canyon lip and you get to just like kind of snipe into their outpost and you have the upper hand. And you could design a lot of different experiences around the same environment, the same set of enemies, and it could even be like repeatable and it would have some replay value there. I think if that's the way they took it with an open world sort of approach that's been rumored, I think it could be really successful.
Now, just kind of switching gears a little bit, just since you weren't on the show last week, just kind of more concise, you don't have to necessarily get into the nitty gritty, because eventually we're going to do, once we learn a little bit more about the actual game and the Elder Scrolls 6, I definitely want to kind of break it down and do what's our wish list look like, but more of a concise view of it. We're talking about reboots now, and with really this franchise, the Elder Scrolls, being gone for so long, a mainline entry in terms of, hey, Skyrim released in 2011, we're getting fucking close to 10 years out from a new Elder Scrolls experience in terms of a mainline game. A whole console generation now without a true new entry in it. Do you think it's going to be rebooted in any type of way or refreshed in terms of we've seen a lot of different open world experiences come out, and I'm not necessarily talking about art style. I'm fully, from what I've seen, they're going to be using photogrammetry textures, kind of like Kingdom Come did, with very picturesque environments and whatnot. From what I've seen, they're going to be using that. I'm sure they're going to be using ray tracing, everything. It's going to look fucking gorgeous. Do you think, from a presentation and gameplay mechanics, even though from what I hear, they're using the creation engine again, which boggles my mind that they're still trying to make that last another, 10 years if they got both Starfield and that using it. Do you think we're going to see any fresh attempts on that franchise? Because it has overall been very, very much the same, at least from a premise and an approach to the gameplay design of being able to go anywhere, being able to do anything. It's very much, the attack animations have changed a little bit, but not much. You're doing very much the same thing in it. Do you think there's going to be any real refresh or reboot aspects within that next iteration that comes out?
I personally don't see it, just because of how wildly successful and how many different remixes of Skyrim we saw.
I agree.
They're probably going to take a don't fix what isn't broken type approach. The thing with Skyrim is that its longevity is owed to the fact that it's on a solid foundation. Much as I don't really care for the game that much, it's just, is if you had more and more of it, if you had more content in that game, people would keep coming back to it. The base is solid enough.
Yeah.
They might do some tweaks with the character progression, or the number of skills have always been fluctuating with different entries in the series. But I don't see them overhauling their main formula of here's a main quest line. You can do it if you want. We're going to tutorialize you for a couple minutes and then kind of drop you in and you can do whatever. Here's this big open world, and there's going to be diversions and side quests and just little caves with, there could be like a pithy joke in the environment, or it could be a side quest with a neat twist, like Oblivion style, or it could like fit into the broader narrative of this location and the lore of the region, of like bigger faction conflicts and politics and whatnot. That seems to be, the solid base for any good Elder Scrolls game, and I don't see them straying from it.
No, I really don't either. I think it's one of those things I could see different maybe narrative approaches to how they tell the story, and from what it seems like, we're going to be either going to High Rock or Hammerfell, at least from what a lot of theorists like to believe, and I'm totally cool with that, because those are areas I've really never seen, because I've never played what was it back in the, what was the one before in between Arena, or in between I'm sorry, in between Daggerfall and Morrowind. It was like the third person action game that they did.
Redguard, I think.
Yeah, I think that was in Hammerfell, I believe, or one of the two was in Hammerfell or High Rock, that was very much like it bombed in sales and shit like that. So, and what led to, kind of trying to go back to the roots, but expand it at the same time of what made Morrowind then, and kind of push Todd Howard to do that and actually kind of go back to the roots, but at the same time expand upon what made Arena and Daggerfall so great. But I agree. I think there's some narrative things they may change up, but I really can't see them doing anything ridiculously different for that franchise, just because, one, it's so drastically a staple within gaming that, I mean, hell, like we've talked about before, they put out a fucking JPEG basically just saying, hey, we're making it. It's legitimately on record happening and we're making it. See you in 2036 type of thing. But people went fucking nuts, and it was like one of the highest trending trailers that E3 for sure, and on YouTube at the time. So like, there's a lot of value to it still that I can't see them being like, you know what, let's take this big fucking gamble and let's just blow it up and try something different. I just cannot see them doing that. But
right.
So kind of starting to head into the end of our show here a little bit. I'm going to list some Microsoft owned IPs that have either been dormant for a while now or recently have struggled in some of the recent iterations. We got Fable, Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, and Crackdown. So of these four franchises, Adam, which do you think would most benefit from a total reboot of direction, and why?
Of these four, the one that could probably benefit most from a total reboot, we've been seeing stuff come out of the indie scene that does what Banjo-Kazooie did, and I think it's been doing it just fine. I don't know if really needs to be revisited at this point, unless Playtonic ends up getting contracted to make another Banjo-Kazooie game. I mean, that's basically what they've been wanting to do all along anyways.
I have no idea how that hasn't... I would hope, let's put it this way, if Microsoft sees value in Banjo-Kazooie, which, hell, they just fucking may not right now, but at the same time,
They put them in Smash.
Is in Smash, yes, exactly, that it's like, they obviously may be putting a toe in the water to say, hey, you know, we do have this, you ever think, you know, we'll ever see this? And with how close they work with Nintendo, you never fucking know. It may end up being a Nintendo Switch game from Rare, you know, just with how closely they work together anymore and how friendly they are.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't be shocked, but at the same time, like, I would hope that they would bring in Playtonic to, like, or at least work with them, because they've seen, one, how much or how well they did with the original Ukulele, but also, two, Ukulele and the Impossible Lair, a different take on that genre and more 3D platformer at times in terms of, you know, almost like a Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze-esque style.
Yeah.
Another, you know, really tough platformer, but you would hope they would at least have conversation with them, because it's like, it's almost like the Sonic Mania type thing, where it's like, you would hope, you see how well they do that, like, instead of, you know, going the Nintendo route and being like, hey, I see you're working with our stuff, shut it down, don't fucking do anything with it. Like, Sega's encouraged, like, hey, you know, we love to see people, you know, their take on Sonic. Hey, we love to see people make Sonic fan art and, you know, different, well, certain Sonic fan art, let's put it that way. They like to see people actually play around with their IP. Kind of like Bethesda used to be back in the day, with how they would literally put their Gamebryo engine included with their CDs of Morrowind, Oblivion, and say, hey, here you go, here's our engine, fucking have fun. You could make whatever you want for it. So I agree. But so out of those four, what are you thinking?
So I'm eliminating Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here, Banjo. Bye-bye.
I'm eliminating Crackdown on the grounds that, like, just don't want to play a super-powered police officer in 2020.
You don't want to be Terry Crews.
I never even, like, looked at Crackdown 3. I had no interest.
Literally, that game has been, like, promoted at, like, 4 straight E3s. And it's always been Terry Crews is being modeled as the main character, and him just being like, I'm loud and I'm Terry Crews. I was in the Old Spice commercials doing drums with my titties. Like,
yeah, that's basically the character that they typecast him as.
Surprise!
So no to Crackdown. It was a mediocre delivery system for the Halo 3 beta to begin with.
Right.
So that leaves us with Fable and Perfect Dark. And I'm going to be quite honest, having replayed GoldenEye and a little bit of Perfect Dark recently, like within the last year, I feel like we might be ready for an immersive sim style shooter in that world. I feel like a Perfect Dark game with, like, very episodic level design, with that kind of, it's almost puzzle oriented, you know, like, you know, the old GoldenEye and Perfect Dark levels, they were about finding the solutions to the objectives. And it could have this, it did get frustrating sometimes, like, oh, if you didn't think of the exact way they wanted you to do it, you would have to just trial and error, whatever. But I think it could be pretty fun to have something like that again, and it would be, like, very consumable. It could be released episodically with, like, a couple missions at a time. You could fucking slap on a level editor or some multiplayer and let people just do what they've been wanting to do forever, and that's just play multiplayer GoldenEye again with mouse and keyboard or some shit. Give it the same janky ass first person aiming with, like, the aim assist on at all times.
I always think, and you actually brought up a sentiment of mine with the episodic nature. I always thought that when I was kind of typing this up, and I've thought this in the past about a few different games, but, like, as you're explaining this, it kind of reassured what I was thinking earlier. Like, I think having Perfect Dark do the formula, the episodic presentation of, like, Hitman is doing right now with its past two iterations, I think is really smart, because there's so many ways that gameplay is manipulative, and, like, you can take different aspects. Like you said, it's puzzly, and almost to the extent like Hitman is. Granted, different objectives that you're doing. One is just trying to kill a motherfucker, but, and be creepy as shit while doing it, like Agent 47 is, but at the same time, though, that, like, fits a mold of, hey, here's a little pack of levels, handle this, and we're going to be working on more, and we want your feedback. Here, boom, here's more that, like you said, even if they threw on a level creator, that would sell gangbusters, I would think.
Yeah.
Or at least to the audience that it's definitely marketed to, which a lot of people, I don't know what the Perfect Dark IP, how much weight it holds anymore, considering the last entry we saw was 2005 or whatever when the 360 launched.
Yeah.
But I think it would at least be, Fable's definitely happening, obviously. That's one of the worst kept secrets in gaming right now, along with the Metroid Prime trilogy port to Switch. But that's already definitely happening. There are Playground Games, from what I hear, is the one who's working on it, supposedly. But it is definitely already going to be getting, I think, the reboot, refresh approach to it. I don't think we're going to get a straight-up carbon copy of previous Fable games, or at least in that approach. I think far too much time has passed, and so much more advancements in the like decisive RPG sect of that genre, and decision making and whatnot with RPGs. I think so much time has passed and so many more advancements have been made for immersion that I just don't think that would work, or at least Fable's formula would work in 2020, 2021, whenever it is that this game's coming out. But so I would imagine they're already planning on doing that reboot. That's already set in stone. So I'm kind of with you. I would think Perfect Dark would be a really good fit.
Thinking about it, I think they share, Hitman and Perfect Dark honestly share a lot of DNA, just in like if you put Hitman in first person, it almost does kind of feel like a Bond level. You kind of have to just sort of explore around and find a solution to these different, very open-ended puzzles almost.
Mm-hmm. That man, literally, Master of Disguise. You remember that movie from like the early 2000s with the turtle guy?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That's literally if he was like a like weird kind of, just white dude with a shaved head, literally the Master of Disguise. Like, that dude just fucking...
an emotionless killer.
That dude literally is the definition of the old banana in the tailpipe. Because, like, that guy keeps fucking hoodwinking people. Like, just fucking popping in like, wait a minute. That bald guy... Is that the bald guy who killed 10 people before, just wearing a fucking, like, cowboy hat now? Like,
a fucking beagle puss mustache.
Yeah, like, wait a minute. Have I seen you before? Yeah. You're at my cousin Frank's birthday party. Man, it's good to see you again. Come on right in. Like,
yeah.
Jesus Christ. So, kind of wrapping up the discussion here a little bit, Adam. I'm just going to give it to you and just get your kind of final words. When it comes to reboots and refreshes and kind of, reimaginings of franchises, and whenever developers and designers really want to take a new approach to a game, what do you think the most important thing to remember when doing that is, and what are the most important elements to that to find success in your eyes?
The original games were successful for a reason. If you're rebooting something that's, been trodden ground, it doesn't always have to be completely faithful to that game. It doesn't have to be just a remaster. Like, we're talking about two kind of different...
100% agree, yes.
Apples and oranges between a remaster and a reboot.
Mm-hmm.
So, take what works, and then... This doesn't even feel like advice at this point. Like, of course you're going to take what works and then iterate on it or change it.
It's more or less, what do you think, what do you think? We're trying to get that formula together of, hey, this is what I've seen in all the games I've played that have gone through this, and this is the things that they've shared that I think kind of help add to that formula to make it work and make that equation actually make sense.
I feel like every good reboot pushes the possibility space that was first bounded by an original. So, like, if you're going to reboot Fallout, the boundaries are already set for the possibility space of what can happen in this wasteland world that we've conceived of. Like, we've got this history and this lore, these groups, and we've got this tone that we want to set. Now, how many different ways can we explore that kind of that one bounded set of possibilities? Well, people are forming all these kind of different gangs and societies and factions. Maybe in this game, it's not just biker gangs, it's Roman cosplayers, or all kinds of weird and wacky stuff. So I guess the main takeaway is that a good reboot should use an original as a foundation and explore the possibilities that it never got to.
I like that. I definitely agree. My biggest things I've always noticed, and I kind of touched on a little bit before, but out of all the refreshes and reboots that I've seen over how many years now gaming, and between us, we've seen a lot of them. The one thing that I always see is, like you said, it doesn't have to be a complete overhaul of leaving what has made that game great, because there's a reason why games get reboots and refreshes and not just, we'll never touch that again. There are some, franchises that we see one and done and we'll never see them again. Like recently, The Order 1886, it's a PlayStation exclusive, but it sounds like, which a lot of people were hyped for, it didn't live up to expectations. A lot of people did like it, but it was very short and it just wasn't worth a $60 price tag, and that really hindered that game. A lot of people now, rumors are coming up that Ready at Dawn will be releasing a sequel to that third party. I don't know for sure if I believe that or not, but you never know. I personally don't think we'll ever see that franchise again, but who knows? But stuff like that, you may never see it again. But at the same time, though, there's franchises like Zelda, like Halo, like Gears of War, like Doom, like these franchises that do still hold weight. There's a reason. I mean, KOTOR, like we were talking about in the news crawl, there's a reason why you go back to these franchises, and it's because there's weight to them. They were impactful. They gained acclaim for a reason, and you don't want to necessarily throw that all away. There's a reason why you want to keep that IP instead of going a whole different direction with a new IP and creating a whole new world. There's a reason why, and it's because they were impactful, and there's more to tell with that. And, a lot of designers and writers know that, but, my biggest thing that I've always seen is you don't want to lose the heart of what made those great. And there's a reason why people attached onto them and kept attaching onto them. It was because they liked what that world built usually. It's usually, I like spending my time within this universe comparative to something else. And, if that wasn't the case, they just wouldn't play it. But even if it is changing up gameplay, even if it is changing up different things like that, it's important not to lose that, what made that franchise special. And I'm even sitting here looking at, my two little Zelda amiibos. I have the Ocarina of Time one, and I have a Breath of the Wild one. And they're so vastly different, but so similar at the same time right now. And, it's cool to see such two different ends of the spectrum in game design, but at the same time sharing so many similarities that it's refreshing almost. And I think that's the most important thing on my end is, you could change gameplay elements, but don't completely change what made playing those games so fun. And you could change canon. You could do all this stuff, and you could iterate on stuff, but make sure you don't forget the storylines that brought you in at the same time. And, there is time that fresh air is needed with stuff, but at the same time, don't forget what got you to the big dance to begin with, I guess. But at least to me. But Adam, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you to talk about video games and what they want to see in refreshes and reboots coming up here? Because we're damn close to next gen, man. It's coming up here. We got new video game consoles coming up, so there's gonna, I'm sure, be a lot of that shit popping up.
You can find me on Twitter at AC_Marshy. That's AC_MARSHY.
And I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travlis, on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Travlis_. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travlis_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me, you can do so over on Xbox Live at regular Travelers, just Travless. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us whenever you get those, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our giveaways that we do run, which make sure you listen to after the show goes off the air to hear about our next one. And Adam, that's it. That's our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of this growing community. Get everyone game on and play them fucking video games, and we will see you next week. All right. It's time to talk about our next giveaway. So, with the spring going from jam-packed to actually pretty laid back, there's one game that is looking to own the first quarter of the year. I mean, one may even say it's looking to rip and tear through it. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Okay, it's Doom Eternal. That's right! To celebrate the launch of the highly anticipated follow-up to the critically acclaimed Doom 2016, we're giving away a new copy of Doom Eternal on Xbox One or PC. That's right! One of you lucky bastards is going to walk away with a copy of what a lot of people are calling the sleeper contender for Game of the Year this year. And all you have to do is follow us over on Twitter at GPGC Podcast, and retweet the pinned tweet on our profile. That's it. On the last episode before the launch of Doom Eternal, we're going to pick one lucky listener and get you squared away just in time for launch. I also have the link to the tweet in the description of this episode as well, wherever you get it, podcast services all around the globe, YouTube, all that jazz, you know. So literally, you have no excuse to enter. None. So there you have it. That's it. Go get you a copy of Doom Eternal on us. Okay, now the show is legitimately over. It's actually over. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Closing time. All that shit, you know? I kind of fucking nailed that right there. All right, anyways, okay. See you next week. Bye.